Common mental health disorders among African Americans include depression, ADHD, suicide among young African American men, and PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because African Americans are more likely to be victims of violent crime.
Realistically, I've suffered from depression and anxiety probably since I was about 15. But I had no idea. It runs in my family. Depression runs in my family. On my mother's side, realistically. My father's side has some bouts of depression, but really it comes from my mother, my aunts. My grandfather committed suicide, didn't know about that. So for me, it was a literal chemical imbalance. If people don't know about depression, it's a chemical imbalance. So when I hit puberty, what happens is my hormones change, right? You hit puberty, I started my menstrual cycle, period, I flow, whatever you guys want to call it. And I was just charged as an angry teenager, right? I was an angry girl, I was 16, I was a teenager, so that was the thing. So a lot of people ignored my symptoms, and I just didn't know. I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know what those things were in high school. Just coming from where I come from and being in the Black community, being from that don't ask, don't tell, we don't talk about anything, our grandparents don't say anything, we can't sit in rooms with adults, so we don't know anything about our family and what's happening. But then in 2010, so I was 21, I tried to commit suicide, so I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. It was the definition of depression. It was a chemical imbalance because of my hormones when I hit puberty. So I never had any trauma. I wasn't abused as a child. I didn't have a death in the family at the time. I didn't have all these things that people think are associated with depression. And that's my point. I want people to understand it doesn't have a name, an age, a race. But for one, you have to admit it. You can't ignore it. We ignore it from our peers so often because we do say it and we think that people are joking. So now it's become a joke. So you go to your friend, you're like, girl, I've been so depressed because I had a breakup or I failed a class or I did all these different types of things. And your friends are like, all right, girl, get me straight. So now you've turned into a joke simply because you don't want to feel any pressure from your friends or your family or any of those types of things, because now you feel bad about it, right? Now you feel pressure because your friends or your mother or your father aren't really diving into your emotions. Our spouses, our parents, our siblings to be that rock and that rock for us. And they are not always that. We can't continue to force our feelings and our emotions and it's not a problem, but just what we're going through, we can't force it on the people who can't handle it. Sometimes your parents and your friends, they can't be your therapist. They can't handle your depression. They can't handle your anxiety. And that's okay. That's not saying that they're a bad person or that your mother or your father or your best friend or anything is against you. But you also have to understand that they need to understand what that is. A lot of people don't understand what depression is and what anxiety is and what schizophrenia is. So in that confusion, they don't know what to do. But then we get upset with them because they don't know what to do. But realistically, neither do we. Coming from slavery, we just went through. We just did whatever we needed to do. And you hear that talk from, when you say our elders, realistically, my parents who are 62 and 63. So my grandparents, the ones who are alive, are like 85, 86. They come from that don't ask, don't tell. There's no need to talk about it. And then going through, depression is, and anxiety and mental illnesses are, what's the word? I know you can edit this, I can't think. Hereditary. Mental illness is hereditary. We literally come from depression. I don't understand why Black people don't get this. Slavery, we were depressed, we were anxious, we were scared, we were running for our lives. So it's just been passed down over and over and over and over again. But what do? We use Christianity, we use song, we use church, which are the things that we use now. And because we have a lot more knowledge, people are kind of getting away from those things. And so now we're just all over the place and we don't want to talk about it because we have an opportunity to do other things.
So I pulled a little data from NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. For their 2014 statistics stated that African Americans are 20% more likely to suffer from severe mental health symptoms in comparison to the general population. And I would anticipate that, given that's 4 years ago, that number has probably risen significantly in the last 4 years. And from their data on the Office of Minority Health, they mentioned some of the most common for our community were major depression, ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or ADD, attention deficit disorder, and also PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I can agree with, in my practice and kind of what they are saying through the Office of Minority Health, I would say that the mood disorders, being the major depression and also the bipolar disorders, those are classified as mood disorders, are very common in our community. Post-traumatic stress disorder, I think, is very common, but it's not always diagnosed, because there is an issue with African American people going to get treatment. So in my practice, I see a lot more people that exemplify the symptoms but don't carry diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder.
There are many different reasons that prevent African Americans from seeking treatment and receiving quality care. Lack of information and misunderstanding from mental health, faith, spirituality, and of course the help of the community, and reluctantly in the inability to access mental health services.
Some of the consequences we deal with as a Black community due to the lack of treatment. But before you answer that question, why do you think that there are lack of resources around mental health in the Black community?
There aren't. You just don't know where they are or where to find them. There is a lot of treatment available, actually. We're about 10 minutes right now from Eastern Market. There are at least 3 places you can go from right here within 10 minutes, and most people don't know it. So the resources are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's, do you know where they are? Do you know how to use them? Do you know where to go from here, from there, with step 1, 2, or 3?
Right.
And so once you figure out where your resources are, how to use them, and how they can benefit you, that's the first step, just realizing what's out there, really. But as far as consequences for not using them, you continue to suffer.
Yeah.
And that's the internal one. But on the outside, a lot of times it looks like jail time, death even, because those suicidal ideations play out. You lose your family, you lose your friends. It's the rock bottom of mental illness. We hear about it with substance abuse. But the same thing happens with depression or schizophrenia. People get tired and it's exhausting to have to go to the hospital so many times and sit and watch your loved ones suffer.
Yeah.
And not understand what they're suffering from.
Yeah. So it's a matter of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and the lack of awareness can induce substance abuse, or you start to self-medicate yourself in some respect when you don't know what services are available to you.
Yes, I think most people will say that our individuals who are seeking supports for mental health disorders have very difficult time. I call it donning our doors or knocking on our doors and asking for assistance and help, because they're not really sure. They're not very trustful of our system, because they don't know our system. We are a community of individuals who, especially African Americans, we tend to trust the church, and if the pastor said, pray about it, and if the pastor said, come let me lay some hands on you, or if the pastor said, then, or if we believe the scripture says, then we try to do those things to take care of ourselves. And we also have the myth of this strong Black woman, and of course we need to suck it up and make it happen, and not face the fact that there are a number of different things that are treatable. If I had an asthma attack today, you would not say suck it up. You would give me an inhaler or try to get me somewhere so that you can help me breathe. And that is what was missing in our community, is that healthcare is healthcare. Whether it is healthcare from the neck down or healthcare from the neck up, it requires
professional care.